Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I've been a Vedic astrologer for 35 years, and I live in New Bedford, Massachusetts. We also have a store, Crystal Expectations, and, a store, Crystal Expectations, and it's located at 854 Brock Avenue, New Bedford, Massachusetts. Again, that's 854 Brock Avenue, New Bedford, Massachusetts. You can look us up online. You can come down and see me there for readings, or I can do readings um, over Zoom or over the phone for you. I also teach people Indian astrology or Vedic astrology, and I've been doing that since 1990, roughly 1996, I would say. So um, to contact me by phone for either information about our store or about Vedic astrology readings or lessons, you can text me or call me at 508-525-0001, or you can email me at Gary Gomes, I'm sorry, at Gary Gomes, G, that's my letter plus the letter G, that's my name plus the letter G, excuse me, at gmail.com. So it's Gary Gomes, G, at gmail.com. Again, text or call 508-525-0001, or email me at garygomesg@gmail.com. Okay? So that's GaryGomes G at gmail.com. COM. Okay? So hopefully that's clear. And I would encourage you to subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, like and share this broadcast uh, to your friends and to people who you think might be interested in Vedic astrology. So I'm going to start off this week with a glance at the chart for the week, and then we'll look into some countries' charts. And I want to look at the NATO chart as well, because there is apparently some concern that the um, aggravation or the insistence on President Trump's part that he wants to acquire Greenland may cause serious rifts in the NATO alliance. So we'll talk a little bit about the origins of NATO just briefly. I don't want to bore you to tears uh, with that kind of stuff. But basically, we have in the chart for this week, just as an overview, we have Jupiter in the first house, which is considered to be kind of a lucky placement. Jupiter is retrograde, so it can give some setbacks or need to redo things connected with work. Jupiter also rules the seventh house, so it can give um, recaps or revisitations of issues that you dealt with either business partners or with relatives, especially husbands and wives. Saturn is in the 10th house, so it's going to be a week of hard work. Um, Saturn aspects the seventh house in this chart. So again, there can be some delays or obstructions or communications problems with spouse or relationship partner or business partners. We have a lot of planets in the eighth house. So this indicates this week is going to be full of research. And especially research in essentially culling out the truth from the lies, and also in terms of um, doing research on investments or property. So You have to be careful about business partners this week, just in general, because they may be inclined to either tell you things that aren't true or try to um, misrepresent themselves. Uh, Not a good week to enter into new business relationships, if I'm totally honest. You can see that Mars and Mercury are really close to each other, and there are a lot of planets that are in combustion, although this moon probably shouldn't be in that status because the moon, even though it's within 3 degrees of the sun, is technically, at least the way I learned it, never combusts. It's never, and combustion means the rays of the sun interfere with the energy of the planet. So they have this weird effect of making the energy stronger, but also destroying it. So what that means in plain English is, let's say you'll have this um, and Mercury are within, all right, planetary war. Mars is winning planetary war. And so you'll have this propensity to take action, but you'll feel it blocked or you'll feel it unclear. It'll come out as this kind of aggressive mass as opposed to thoughtful, considerate, clever action. And it's easy to lose your temper with this combination, so just be mindful of that. Venus is also combusts the sun. It's not as close. Venus really isn't affected as badly by combustion as Mars is. Um, and I saw one Vedic astrologer who I'm not going to mention the individual by name, but the point that was being made was that Mars is weakened by the combustion, so people won't be as angry. It's been my experience people tend to get more angry or more upset if combustion occurs between Sun and Mars because it's like this huge fireball of energy. So I think that um, if you're seeing people saying that online, I would take it with a grain of salt. Um, and because Mars is still very potent. Mars is also in its exalted sign. It's in its best possible sign. It'll be at its exaltation degree within a couple of months. And so Mars will be very, very strong. Now, strong Mars is nothing to be afraid of, actually, because with a strong Mars, people tend to work more logically and more directly and with um, less deceit, less um, less they're more deliberate in terms of what they mean. A weak Mars, on the other hand, I've seen tends to make people angry or a little bit scared or a little bit deceitful. This is where you have to watch out, especially for that Mars-Mercury conjunction, because this is a politician's or a lawyer's combination. So you'll see a lot of people flying off the handle over the next month or so, just because of the Sun, Mercury, Mars combination. And they're not, Mars will hold back. It'll fall out of combustion range I say within about 2 weeks. Uh, but Mercury will probably stay pretty much within combustion range. And Venus will probably fall out of combustion range it'll take a while, but probably probably before the end of the month. Not the end of this month, I'm sorry, before it'll probably correct itself, excuse me, by the middle of next month. So, so at least from this chart, everybody's new, everybody's anxious, everybody's bursting with energy, but they don't know quite how to direct it. That's why we're seeing a lot of, I pay a lot of attention to the international news, and there was an occupation of Parliament in England by anti-Islamic demonstrators just recently. Um, that tends to be this kind of activity. You're seeing a lot of uh, anger, justified or not, in Minneapolis right now in the United States and across the country uh, about the about ICE activities, um, and you're also seeing a lot of um, scandals because of Rahu in the ninth house connected with um, people from other countries. This is not necessarily just true in the United States, people from other countries, or you're seeing allegations of scandals. Let me clarify that. And also a certain pessimism, especially in the United States, but also just all over the world in terms of opportunities being shut off. So again, a lot of the gloomy outlook we're experiencing right now over the past week has been really caused by the moon in Scorpio last week, moon in Sagittarius towards the end of this week, and now this is a new moon in Capricorn. So people are starting to actually try to figure out how these changes will affect their daily lives, um, how the proposed activities will either destroy or help their lives. And but again, be prepared for a lot of um, misrepresentation on both sides of the political spectrum. Since these are showing up in a sign ruled by Capricorn, which is more of a Democrat ruled sign, I would tend to say we'll see it coming more from the Democratic side of things. Last month we saw it coming more from the Republican side of things, and that was so I should have said that then, and I apologize for not saying it. But they were also restricted from doing certain things last month. Um, but this month, just because these planets are only Capricorn, it will cause, I would say, some aggressive behavior on the part of Democrats and also, people who are connected with the institutions, the larger institutions in Europe and China and Japan. Um, I'll try to look at Japan's chart today. I think I did last week, but I'm not sure. And I'll look at India's chart too. But the general tenor of the week is kind of antagonistic, if I'm totally honest about it. Um, Desire for change in leadership all around the world. This is not unique in the United States. And Saturn is in the 10th house. So again, there'll be a lot of pressure to make big changes internationally. So this is really a period where we'll see a lot of foreign involvements or foreign governments toppling over the next few months. You'll see a lot of internal dismay and distress in 2026. And what I did last week, I don't know if you saw last week's show, I compare what happened in 1906 to, or at least I think I did, I compare what happened in 1906 to what's going to happen in 2026 because these are 120-year cycles that we're dealing with here. At least in the way that I do Vedic astrology, these are 120-year cycles. And the first time we had this cycle was back in um, roughly in 17, uh, in the late 1780s. The last time we went through this kind of a of a transition, actually around the mid 1780s, and that was when the United States was in a little bit of chaos, a little bit of uh, disarray. And if we look at other countries, certainly countries like France were involved in revolutionary activity. So it's a little bit difficult to project out to other countries what's happening in your world. but there was a little bit of disarray, which essentially led to the Constitutional Convention and the formation of the Constitution. In 1906, there were a lot of foreign adventures the United States got involved in. So it wasn't, so there was war in Philippines, war in, uh, and the Spanish-American War obviously was uh, kind of wrapping up. There are also a lot of reforms engaged in around that time. So before we look back on those eras and say there, there were a lot of bad things done, there are also a lot of good things done. So essentially, uh, the National Parks Act was instituted under President Roosevelt, and so you can see a whole bunch of reforms. This was we're right now in sort of like the middle of a progressive era, and some people out there may be saying, no, this isn't progressive, this is regressive. This is essentially anything is progressive if it upsets the established order of things. So, so that's how I view it anyway. So essentially the established order for the past 60 years has been more corporate, more internationalist, um, more um, moving towards a decentralization of power from the United States. And what you can see during the last two progressive eras was essentially in the 1780s, you saw a need for a more coherent union taking place. In the 1906s or the midnight 1900s, the beginning of the 20th century, you saw administrative power being exercised to a much larger extent than it ever had before, and also a lot of foreign adventures. Certainly a lot of empire building, and I remember having a conversation with a fellow astrologer years ago, and I thought the Mars period we were in last, we're in a Rahu major planetary period now, and I thought the Mars period would involve us in more wars. And he said, no, wait for Rahu. We're in a Rahu major planetary period. Actually, in point of fact, we did get involved in more wars during the Mars period, but they weren't as publicized as they were during the Rahu major planetary period. So that was when we got involved in Somalia. So they were more off the radar efforts. When Donald Trump became president, everything we did was put under a huge magnifying glass. But there were certainly engagements in other countries between 2007, roughly between 2008, and 2015. So, so, but again, they weren't necessarily given a lot of publicity. So let's go back. So let's go over to general viewpoint of this week. Good for opportunities, good for new beginnings, but not with partnerships. If you get into new contracts, read every line, read every detail, because we don't have a Mercury retrograde, but we do have a combination for deceit here. Okay, so that's just me giving you some friendly advice some free advice as an astrologer who's seen these conjunctions a lot. And again, we also have, I would say, the press acting a little bit deceitful again. The United States is a Mercury Rahu conjunction, which is essentially a sensationalistic press, and they'll essentially do anything to boost sales. So we have a commercial press. Every country in the world has a commercial press to a certain extent. Even companies like the BBC, they're financed by a tax on televisions. Basically, everybody in the UK has to pay. So, so essentially, none of these activities are done for free. There is no, so somebody's paying for this in one way or the other. That doesn't mean I have anything against the BBC, but uh, if you're looking at news and saying, "Oh, I'm getting objective facts," you really aren't. You have to sift through a lot of data in order to sort of get to the truth of things. And that's always the way it's been, to be honest. It's just a little bit more, the biases are just a little bit more obvious now. So let's go over to, so actually you should feel blessed that you're being lied to more, but it's also more obvious. All right, so um, let's see now. So this is the NATO chart, okay? Now, NATO was formed basically as an alliance. It was the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, formed in 1949 as essentially a compact between Western European countries and the United States, in which essentially the United States said, well, it's in our interests if we keep Western Europe free of communism. Okay, so essentially it was a deterrent to communism. It was a deterrent, and actually after that, Russia formed the Warsaw Pact as a response to NATO. But the Warsaw Pact didn't precede NATO. But Russian takeover of large parts of Eastern Europe did, or USSR takeover of large parts of Eastern Europe did precede NATO. So, so essentially, the United States and a variety of other countries got together and said, well, we'll form the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And there's a similar organization called CETO in Southeast Asia. And I don't believe there's one for South America, but I'm not sure. But basically, this was formed really for a function which is really passed. Now, does that mean that Europe's in there is no threat to Europe or to the United States? Well, no, that's not true. Um, Russia may still have expansionary interests. China may still have expansionary interests. Other countries may have expansionary interests. And a lot of these are based around economics. So you can see Saturn's in Leo in the first house. So that's really an intention to maintain the established order. Um, K2 is in the third house. So this is a freely entered into partnership. And we'll look at the major planetary periods over here. So this will give you an idea on how I analyze a chart. The sun is the Lord of the first house. It's located in the eighth house. So a lot of what NATO does is actually under the radar. It was formed. And again, some of the partnerships have been difficult. We have Mars affliction in this chart. So it looks like one partner is contributing more than another partner, or partners take advantage of each other at different times. We have a debilitated Mercury in this chart, so sometimes communications aren't good. However, for commercial interests, Venus is exalted in the eighth house, so when commercial interests are at stake, then they will tend to override the communication problems. So we will have some kind of a communication um, link. It'll be more based upon feelings than on rational military decision making. And Jupiter is debilitated, so it's not really, despite the fact that the organization is ostensibly formed to do good things. The Jupiter in Capricorn essentially gives it a very materialistic impetus. It's designed to protect material borders. It's designed to protect um, borders and relationships. Moon's in the 11th house of gains, so you may have some partnerships may be engaged in it to its own advantage. And you have K2 in the third house, so it does have military capability, obviously. A lot of that military capability is hidden because Mars is over here in this sign. And also, it's got pretty strong legs because even though the structure is hidden, the Sun and Mars, the Sun's heading towards its exaltation sign, and Mars is heading towards its own sign. So basically, this is a strong military presence kind of a chart, okay? But it isn't perfect, and I would never say any chart is perfect. But this chart in particular does have some problems. So the, so the relationship is what I would call largely um, um, transactional. And what I mean by that is essentially if your NATO partners are happy with what you're doing and you give them enough money, or if you or if you apply yourself solidly enough, that Saturn will stay happy in the first house. If you don't, then that Jupiter will tend to break alliances or make the alliances rather shallow. Right now, interestingly enough, we are going through a period in NATO history in which the alliance is a little bit shaky. And this started so we're in a K2 major planetary period. K2 can dissolve things or it can give things up, but it can also represent a difficult period or a reformation. And this K2 Mahadasha started in November 23rd of 2021. So yeah, I find it interesting this K2 major planetary period started shortly before Ukraine, uh, the Russian invasion of Ukraine occurred. Because what K2 does is it tends to give um, a feeling that you don't have to follow the rules, so you can do whatever you like. And so that K2 would tend to put, number one, it would tend to put this body into a warlike mode here because K2 is a lot like Mars in Vedic astrology. And uh, I believe it was around January 22nd to February 13th, we were in a K2 Rahu subperiod. That was essentially when um, there was some advice given to Ukraine uh, and Russia invaded. So the alliance has been under threat, or the alliance has been aggressive since November of 2021, to be truthful. Um, since NATO is a relatively young organization, we haven't had this kind of experience before. Let me just go back to the levels. I'm gonna put the levels down a little bit. Yeah, so in 1985, there was a problem with NATO as well. Um, 1951, the organization was formed, uh, was essentially in what I would call a hyper-vigilant mode because it was a Rahu's major planetary period. Jupiter, it was transactional 1969 to 1985. Europe wasn't too happy with the United States during this period. I know that because I have a good memory. And there were a lot of both financial activities and international activities the United States was engaged in that Europe wasn't particularly happy about, namely the Vietnam War, mainly the um, uh, the oil shortages in that happened during the Nixon administration and continuing into the Carter administration. And in 1985, the United States, although working in tandem with NATO allies, engaged in a couple of activities which NATO wasn't too thrilled about. Um, so um, so so basically, this subperiod, and since 2004, I would say the alliance has been a bit confused because we have a debilitated Saturn in this chart. K2, if the alliance can stay together until 2028, it'll endure. So that's only 2 years away. So let's see what the levels are. But this is a disruptive time. It has been since November 11th of 2025. And even going back further than that, there was some shock at President Trump indicating his interest in taking over Greenland or in acquiring Greenland. And the Jupiter subperiod right now, this is the negotiation stage. The Saturn stage comes in October 19th of 2026 to November 27th of 2026. And the confusion over whether or not this will be an existing order will continue really until November 23rd of 2028. Now, this doesn't mean it'll break, but we do have Saturn over this series of planets, which are basically connected with the foundation of the organization, and also Rahu in the seventh house, which makes us unhappy with leadership. Ketu's in the first house, which makes it a bit fragile right now. So, do I think NATO is going to break up? Yeah, it looks unlikely to me because we're only 2 years away from a Venus subperiod, which should be good for reestablishing NATO's viability. But will NATO be ticked off of the United States for the next few years? Yeah, definitely. Or the NATO, uh, or put it this way, we won't see eye to eye on certain priorities. That's not only true in um, in what's been happening with Greenland, but also it's been true in what's been happening in Europe in terms of Europe um, banning certain candidates from running, and also some of the countries actually um, imprisoning people um, for freedom of expression. And I think that all those things put together, that Mercury, that debilitated Mercury, um, adds to that. And you'll see more bad communications between February 16th and probably April 25th of 2026. And I think you'll see like what I would call a reconfiguration or a realignment between April of 2026 to June 22nd of 2026. The most likely time I can see it actually um, coming close to dissembling is around November of 2027. But I still don't think that's going to happen, mainly because Venus will essentially prevent that from happening. Venus's influence on Mercury will prevent that from happening. But um, but yeah, it's interesting because NATO has, I would say, not a really good chart, if I'm honest. The first period, the Rahu major planetary period was, or the Mars and Rahu major planetary periods were were fairly good because they were based around shared defense and similar acquisitional goals. So Rahu's in the ninth house in this chart, and Jupiter is in the sixth house. So 1969 to roughly 1985, you saw some more open disputes, and 1985 to around 2000, and I think just 1985 to so Saturn Mahadasha would be uh, 1985 to roughly 2004. You will see some internal shifts and some arguments, uh, and bad communications between 2004 and 2000, roughly 2018 or so. So this is not surprising because as the economies develop and as countries develop, their priorities shift a little bit. So, um, but I can tell you for sure NATO was more ready to act in 2021, 2022 than they were prior to that. Um, it was it was really so that's something that K2 can do. Yeah, November of 2021. Um, K2 is really God. All right. And it was the end of a Mercury Mahadasha uh, when uh, ba when basically they started showing what I would call a certain amount of arrogance um, in the way they were dealing with Russia and in the way they were dealing with the rest of the world. So it's, and again, we're part of NATO. So again, this is not just blaming the European powers. This was a collective screw up. And but again, I think this period between 2021 and now has really, I would say, has really destabilized NATO. NATO also, K2 is the indicator of theft in a chart. So this indicates theft through partnerships. So when I say this, this doesn't mean I think that K2 was ripping off um, his partners, but they were taking liberties with what they could get away with, basically. Hopefully nobody would notice. And I think this has led to our current state of affairs. Let's go over here. And again, the fact that we have a president who is more American centric than internationally centric has a lot to do with that. So, yeah, we'll see how it works out. But the most dangerous years are between now, roughly, and 2028. Coincidentally or not so coincidentally, in line with our presidential elections. Um, but there should be, I think it should hold together, although there will certainly be arguments. Um, Let me just look at Japan again. I think I did Japan last week. Um, there was one interesting thing I saw. It was like a little clip. That is that essentially China only has one road of access um, to trade. So it's boxed in except for the Pacific Ocean. They want another route of access, and so they want a route of access um, through the Indian Ocean. For that, they'd have to build a long um, train system or transportation system through other territories, and that makes India nervous, and that makes a lot of other countries nervous, and um, they're also kind of blocked in by a whole group of countries which really aren't their friends. It's like the Philippines and Indonesia and Singapore and Japan. None of these countries are really friendly to China. So if we look at the Japanese birth chart, Japan is ready, is more warlike during this particular period. Um, and so again, that's the K2. And you, and let's see now, let's look at India. But Japan will care less about international conventions than it has before. That's one thing that's for sure. India. So let's look at India. So India is in a Mars Mahadasha. So a lot of these countries are in what I would call relatively aggressive stances now. India is in a relatively aggressive stance. It's between September 11th of 2025. It entered its Mars major planetary period. Mars activates K2 in the Indian chart. Um, and so it may be more willing to engage in conflict than previously. And let's see now, hold on a second. So there's nothing that ever indicated that India backed off from a fight. But if they get challenged now, that their first impulse may be, so it has happened in Pakistan, their first impulse will be to fight back. Let's look at China again for a second. So we have it. Okay. China is, will enter a Mercury Mars subperiod. And it's in a Mercury subperiod. It's aligned with K2. It'll be in a Mars subperiod in February 20th of 2027. You may see some military action on China's part after February 20th, 2027. I hope that doesn't happen. Uh, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I hope that the Mars being weak will offset that, but no, in the Vamsa chart, it's very strong. So if you go from this chart and you see a planet in a weak sign, like Mars being in Cancer over here, that's weak. But Mars is in Capricorn in the Vamsa chart, so that's actually strong. But it's also stronger for business and property, so that's positive, but it's still not a good sign. And let's go over to, but a lot of people's tempers are kind of hitting. Um, just want to look at Ukraine. So Ukraine's headed for towards some kind of revolution, I think. Um, it'll be in a Rahu subperiod. Um, Rahu's in the 10th house. I'm guessing you'll see a change, a shift in governments in Ukraine over the next couple of months. Sure. And we'll look at Iran. Iran's really an important country. I can't get to all of them today, unfortunately. I want to look at UK as well, but let me look at Russia first. Russia. Russia. Okay, yeah, you go. Russia. All right, so Russia is in the moon Saturn subperiod until August 12th of 2026. So it'll be inclined to slow down progress. But Saturn is located at an angle in this chart. I think by late January, Russia will pretty much have gotten everything it wanted from the conflict. Um, Also, again, Russia can't be trusted because of this Mars-Mercury conjunction, but most countries can't be trusted. Politically, it's very suspect. Okay, so politically, I don't know if you'll ever see free elections in Russia, but this is the house of politics in Russia. Mars is placed in the house of politics, and politics will largely be um, sort of like a shadow. It's not, they're not really gonna let an election go that isn't manipulated in some way. Let's go to, okay, so we're going to China. Let's go to UK for a second. Okay. Hmm. Second. I just had it. Please, look at the active union chart. So England, like the United States, is in a Rahu major planetary period. It's a little bit further along. So um, Rahu Venus. So actually, you should see some shifts in policy in the UK over the next few months. I would say we're going to see a shift in government between March and August of 2026. So this doesn't necessarily mean the Labor Party will be thrown out of power, but you'll see certain national elections take place, which will be detrimental to the Labor Party. Um, and also, because Venus is in the fifth house of politics, you'll see more loyalty to what I would call um, the people born in the UK exercised over the next few months. Um, that doesn't mean the UK is going to turn into a racist country. So don't get that thought out of your head. It's just that it will be more role. And I don't have a birth chart for Greenland. Maybe I have one for. I don't have one for Colombia either. So let me just see if I have Denmark. Denmark. I don't have Denmark. All right. Hold on a second. Denmark's birth chart was problematic when I was starting the show. Yep. Because the country is really old. Let's see. Uh, all right, so it's June 5th 1849, June 5th, 1849. Oops, 1849. And I'll probably stop doing the charts after this, after I do this one. 12:15 p.m., Copenhagen, Denmark. 12:15 p.m., Copenhagen. See what Denmark's birth chart looks like. So Denmark has a Rahu birth chart. It has Rahu in the first house, so it's not going to be inclined to let go of things easily. Um, but it's in a moon Mahadasha, moon Venus Mahadasha. It's got a full moon though in the chart. So actually this chart has some similarities with Donald Trump's chart. Um, so they're sort of karmically tied together, interestingly enough. Um, so they're in a moon Venus subperiod, so that does indicate they don't want to give up their property. That's perfectly understandable. They want to possess it. Um, between January 19th of 2026, I would say between February 18th. Well, let me just go a little bit further. 2026, they'll be in a bit of a panic about losing things. Say before the end of the year. Let me just go down to the smaller subgrid. All right, so not before the end of the year, but by December of 2027, I don't think they'll have Greenland anymore. There's no indication from this chart that I can see of an invader. Now, I could be wrong in my interpretation of the chart. I could be engaged in wishful thinking. That's always a danger. So, while looking at the house of enemies, that's Saturn. Um, the time in which that's most possible is around November of this year, and again around September of 2027. But this chart is, but there are a couple of things which make it likely that Greenland won't stay, and that is because Saturn's in, Denmark's in a Saturn return right now. It's in the Mahadasha, or the major planetary period of a debilitated planet. And let's see, and they might get pumped up financially, but to be truthful, from what I read about Greenland and Denmark, Greenland's more of a cash drain on Denmark than it is a cash benefit. The Greenlanders may have something to say about this. They may not want to go with either country. So um, this is This is something we'll look at a little bit more a little bit in more detail over the next week or so, unless something happens rapidly that I'm not seeing. Okay, so let's go back to the now chart, and I'll go over your astrological signs for the um. So here, close out, close out our Danish friends. All right, so but no wonder Hamlet was so depressed. That's a really debilitated moon. But I'm joking. That chart was drawn up long after Hamlet was thought up by Shakespeare. So essentially, right now for this week. So let's go to first of all to Aries. Aries is starts from April 15th through um, May 15th. Aries still has some potential for losses. It's so since we're not really seeing a lot of change in this sign because Saturn's going to be stuck. It's a very slow moving planet. We'll go over to the Navamsha chart, and the Navamsha chart has Saturn in the second house of money. So essentially, this will give, I'm sorry, it's in the fourth house of home. My apologies. And so, so essentially for this chart, money will go out because of home expenditures, maybe for status reasons. Um, Second house Lord is Venus, is placed in the 10th house of career. So career life should be good, although this particular chart will get a lot of additional expenses this month, especially connected with work or career. Um, but again, there will be some success and some recognition from that. Excuse me. Jupiter's in the third house, so there should be some good diplomatic impulses to this particular chart. K2's is in the fifth house, so again, some displeasure or dismay from children. That'll be there for about another year, unfortunately. That's. I wish I could tell you that I'll be over soon, but it won't be. Um, Seventh house Lord is Mars, located in the 10th house, so relationship partners will be focused on new businesses, new activities, and also focused on their own career. Um, we have this cluster of planets in the 10th house of career, so again, a lot of career focus. Maybe even thinking about changing career, but wait at least a month to do that. Rahu's in the 11th house, good for financial gains, but again, it won't seem satisfying. And Saturn in the 12th house, again, gives this problem with um, spending. So overall, not a bad chart for Aries, but again, we have this strong emphasis on financial security and also on spending. So this part of the chart is loaded with planets. All right, Taurus has, that goes from May 15th to June 15th. Taurus has Jupiter in the second house, good for financial gains. Saturn's in the 11th house, slow but steady financial progress. K2's in the fourth house, so it's again some disruption or arguments at home. Seventh house Lord is Mars, placed in the ninth house. Some extra like to relationship partners, some extra benefit from relationship partner, and also study for that person. And let's see now, 10th house has Rahu in the 10th house. So a lot of career ambition, a lot of career success. But again, it won't feel like you're making enough money on your job. It doesn't mean you're unhappy with your job. It just means the money will be a little bit scarce. You'll have to save. For Gemini, Gemini has, this is June 15th to July 15th. Gemini has Jupiter in the first house. Um, and if we have Jupiter in the first house, we have basically good luck in career and in relationship life. K2's in the third, a lot of fearlessness for this particular sign. Unexpected windfalls or financial gains, but also a feeling of being trapped and not being able to enjoy it. Um, and also a lot of research required for this particular sign. Wow, that took a while. Rahu's in the ninth house, good for financial growth, but again, it won't feel satisfactory. Saturn's in the 10th, good for domination of other people or for um, basically ordering other people around. For Cancer, Cancer has no planets in the first house. This is July 15th through August 15th, and Cancer has no planets in the first house. This sign will be a little bit less carefully spoken than usual. It will be blunt in its assessment of things. And we have Venus, Sun, Moon, Mars, and Mercury. A lot of dealings with business partnerships, but also don't trust business partnerships, don't trust your spouse, at least for a few weeks. And that's mainly because of, as I said, that Mercury-Mars conjunction. It's what like to call a lying combination. Not like lying around the house, but basically not telling the truth. So again, not a particularly good month for relationships for Cancer, but good for work life. Rahu's in the eighth house. Rahu in the eighth indicates the sign is interested in digging up facts on people, especially people who may be involved in illegal activities. Saturn's in the ninth house, good for some financial gain, but slow accumulating. So not a bad time for Cancer, but again, I think this sign, I would recommend the sign be really careful in business dealings. For Leo, Leo goes from August 15th to September 15th. We have K2 right in the first house. As I've been warning you before, a lot of people who are Leo rising or countries that have prominent Leos will see disruptions in their lives. They'll see some losses, although they will also see some unexpected gains. Their luck will take really weird twists and turns, but they'll actually end up pretty triumphant. Um, so there'll be these incredible down periods, but also these incredible up periods. So, and it'll be more up than down. The This makes this sign very competitive this week because the sun is in the sixth house, along with this cluster of planets that require sacrifice and work. Second house Lord is in the sixth house, so any financial gain comes about through very, very, very hard work. Rahu's in the seventh house, relationship partner gets a lot of attention this month. Saturn is in the eighth house. Again, some opposition from people who are used to doing things a certain way and not really having to think about doing things. So again, it's not necessarily illegal activity, but some changes are being made, and these folks don't like it. And these are more people who've been used to engaging in the system in a certain way and getting rewarded for it. So a lot of people who are enemies of Leo are going to have to adjust to new modes of behavior. Um, Jupiter's in the 11th house, good for financial gains and financial triumphs. So this sign actually looks like it has a relatively good month, but again, it should probably be careful about stomach issues or digestive issues. For Leo, this is September 15th through October 15th, one of my favorite times of year, and this essentially gives good career success. Some problems with relationship partners, especially relationship partners, seem to be sad or a little bit unhappy with their lives or limited. Uh, there is a lot of there are a lot of planets in the fifth house of politics and luck. So this sign will be obsessed with creative activities, politics, luck, children. And Rahu's in the sixth house. Again, this isn't a bad placement. It gives powerful enemies, but also the ability to beat down those enemies and triumph. Kate, who's in the 12th house, will give this sign a very spiritual bent this week. For our friend Libra, oh, and Jupiter's in the 10th, very good for career gain and career advancement. My apologies. I think I said that before, but I want to make sure I didn't miss it. For Libra, Libra has no planets in the first house. Libra goes from October 15th to November 15th, excuse me. And unusual friends or unexpected friendships start popping up. Um, Luck is generally good. It'll be better in July, but it's generally good right now. Venus is placed in the fourth house along with an exalted Mars, Mercury, and Sun and Venus, Sun and Moon, excuse me. And this gives a lot of focus on career life and also on career life from home. So at least from this chart, a lot of assets like tangible assets will be being considered for either purchase or letting go. And Rahu's in the fifth house. This is generally fairly good for Libra rising. It gives unexpected gains or unexpected increases, but also unexpected costs because K2 sits in the 11th house. Saturn is in the sixth house. Saturn aspects the 12th house in the chart. So this will give continued problems with finances. Jupiter in the ninth, very lucky for Libra rising, and this will also increase Libra's ability to fulfill its stated goals in life. So that's actually fairly good. For so that's for the period from whoops, I lost it. Oh, then I got it again. So that's for the period from I'm going to stop the share and pull it up again. Just make sure I didn't black it out. All right, so the chart is back on the screen again. Let's go to Scorpio, our friend. Um, Scorpio looks like it's going to have a pretty impactful month. This is November 15th to December 15th. Um, a lot of desire to go out and do things, maybe a little bit of tension connected with that, but strong desire to make a difference. Rahu is in the fourth house, strong desire to complete goals and projects. Rahu is in the fourth house. This isn't a bad placement, but it does indicate the person's dissatisfied with their home. Saturn is in the fifth house. This is actually good for improving health, but mainly through patient processes or mainly through rest. Jupiter is in the eighth house. This Jupiter will be in the eighth house for several months. So this will give unexpected gains or unexpected financial gains from either children or other family members. K2 is in the 10th house. This is considered usually a position for a person who does a lot of civil service work, but also can rise suddenly and start taking over things. So this isn't bad. So this isn't a bad chart for Scorpio. It's just a lot of work and a lot of research needed to realize your goals. This isn't a popular time for this sign, but it'll get a lot done. For Sagittarius, this is December 15th through January 15th. We have one, two, three, four, five planets in the second house. The Lord of the first house is in the seventh, so overall the sign is protected by Jupiter. Uh, Venus A lot of focus on financial growth. As I've said this many times before, but it's really true right now, and this is actually the month in which you can actually make some financial improvements. Rahu is in the third house, a lot of fearlessness in pursuing one's goals. Saturn is in the fourth house. This is actually very good for financial improvement, uh, but through home life. And I think, at least from the chart, K2 sits in the ninth house. Unexpected gains through other people's mistakes or through sudden twist, twists in luck. So again, relationships, I wouldn't recommend new relationships for Sagittarius, rising sun or moon. But in terms of gaining things financially, it's a good week. For Capricorn, Capricorn goes from January 15th through February 15th. Um, we have a lot of planets in Capricorn right now, so this will focus a lot on financial growth. Now, again, it's normally considered a bad thing when a lot of planets cluster in a house. So this can undermine financial security for some Capricorns, and it can actually create too much pressure from different directions. That's the only flaw I see in this particular placement. Um, Rahu is in the second house. This sign is going to naturally want more money coming in. Um, that's his normal nature, but even be stronger this month. Saturn is in the third house, good for financial gains, financial improvement, and self-discipline. Jupiter's in the seventh is in the sixth house, very good for improvement, economic improvement, but through hard work. And K2's in the eighth house. This means unexpected interest in behind the scenes activities. So digging into what people are doing or trying to see if people are conspiring against you. For Aquarius, Aquarius has Rahu in the first house. This is February 15th to March 15th. And um, Aquarius with this particular sign placement, it hasn't changed a great deal over the past few months. So Aquarius will be very creative this month. It'll be very acquisitive this month. It doesn't have enough money to make its dreams a reality, at least right now. But Jupiter is aspecting the sign. It will give it more money before June. And K2's in the seventh house, so relationship partners can seem a little bit distant or aloof. And you have all these planets clustered in the 12th house. So this will give a lot of expenses connected with property, relationship partner, the government, and to a certain extent, friends. And let's see now, and that's it. Okay. So again, if you can cut back on those expenses, you'll be doing really, really well. Um, and again, if you can just hold off for about a month, you'll have all these planets in your sign. So that'll be a much better period for you. Saturn is in Pisces. Pisces lasts from um, March 15th to April 15th. And Saturn being in the first house is very good for hard work, a lot of focus on financial responsibility. Jupiter's in the fourth house. This is good for overall improvement in home life. K2's in the sixth house. You have to watch out for some stomach irritation. Um, we have a lot of planets in the 11th house, so you can get gains from several different directions if you have this kind of a combination, but they'll stick around, they won't stick. Rahu's in the 12th house. Again, a lot of what I would call obsessive spending for this sign is can be indicated, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen. Okay, so that's it for the 12 signs. Now we're going to go on to the map. Wow, what a cluster. Okay, so we have from the west to the east, we have, trying to figure out what this line is. This looks like a Jupiter line. Um, so there's a Jupiter line, sun line, moon line, um, an entire cluster of planets that are in Capricorn are are in this section right here, and this can indicate some financial progress coming into Alaska. But also one of the things I would be careful about might be earthquakes or land disturbances in Alaska and northwest Canada. There is a Rahu line coming up right here in northwest Canada. I think that might be a little bit of an earthquake warning for this particular region and all the way down through the west coast of Canada. So it doesn't mean there's going to be a series of earthquakes, but that region is very vulnerable. Um, we have the next prominent line we have is a Jupiter line running through New Mexico. No, I'm sorry, running through Arizona, Utah, and Idaho and Montana, and up into the north in Canada. So that Jupiter line can be beneficial for election integrity and also for financial gains for that area. The next lines are all clustered across the middle of the country and the middle of Canada, in particular in Alberta and I think it's Saskatchewan. And we have Mercury, Mars, Moon, Sun, Venus lines passing over Texas, Mexico, and all the way up north to Nebraska, and all the way through Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, and no, not Missouri, excuse me, and see now. All right, so this entire part of the country will be subject to, um, I would say, severe storms and disruptions in government. There are no lines going over Minnesota, but we do have a Venus line close to Minnesota. So what does that mean in plain English? Well, the civil unrest will continue in Minnesota. It'll probably spread to other regions, although I don't really see this part of the country as being a big cradle of that. Maybe near Austin, definitely. That's one possibility, but not really in other large urban areas. And there, the president has indicated that he's talking about sending troops into Mexico to stop the drug trade. We might see that relatively soon, essentially, maybe within a month or so, at least from this chart. It may be sooner than that, but that looks like it's on the table. There is a Rahu line off the coast of the United States running close to Nova Scotia, not quite in it, and kind of affecting Guyana, Venezuela, Brazil, Bolivia, and down into Argentina. So Rahu lines tend to cause panics. So there may be fiscal panics there or financial panics. And essentially, um, from this chart, that Rahu line looks like it'll wreak some havoc in Brazil and also in Paraguay and Uruguay. Now, when I say havoc, I'm not talking about a major uh, government meltdown, but there will be a little bit, I would say, quite a bit of instability in Brazil, and also some economic problems in Brazil. For the rest of these lines, they're not hitting anything directly, except for maybe the Cape Verde or uh, islands down here. But this, all these lines are hitting off the coast of Africa, hitting down by close to Ghana and close to the Ivory Coast. And there could be some civil disruptions in that part of the world or um, aggressive action um, being taken by the government in that part of the world. That's a distinct possibility. There are no other lines going through until you hit this Rahu line passing through Sweden, um, passing through Norway, Sweden. Uh, it looks like parts of Germany, Poland, and all the way down to Greece. And um, so, yeah, at least from this chart, let me just shrink this down a little bit. Um, let's look at the map a little bit more carefully. It lost me for a minute or so there. Going a long time without taking a break, so that's what happens. Let me see if I can shrink this map down a little bit. See if I can. Ah, let me zoom out. All right, that's better. All right, so we do have a kind of a panic happening in Norway, Sweden, throughout Eastern Europe, down into Turkey, down into Sudan, Egypt, and not quite in Somalia, but if we take this Saturn line over here, Ukraine has um, lines going through it. It has a Saturn line going through it, which doesn't look too good for Ukraine, if I'm quite honest with you. But you know, they've surprised me before. They've stuck it through. They've stuck through in longer than I've expected. And let's see now. And I was just being honest. Um, there's a Saturn line going through Turkey and Saudi Arabia and down through Somalia. Now, Saturn lines aren't necessarily things to be feared, but they do indicate some hardship, either physical or emotional, to those regions of the world are going through. So my first inclination is to say strong potential for earthquake or for low food supply, at least in those regions of the world, and also some possibility for poverty or taking away gains. Now there's a Jupiter line running through um, Russia. Um, to, I believe this is Tajikistan. Sorry, I screwed that up. And Afghanistan and Pakistan. So this Jupiter line should give a little bit of a benefit to India, Tajikistan, Russia, and Afghanistan. So there should be at least a little bit of a good period for them. there are a lot of lines running through Turkey right now, and that usually indicates some governmental disruption or some problem or emergency connected with the economy. This doesn't look like a long-lasting issue, but it'll affect property. It'll also affect precious metals, at least from this chart, and things like oil. So we're expecting to see some problems connected with that. Also, I didn't mention it over here, but the United States will run into similar problems with those items. Okay, and so will Mexico. We have a Rahu line going over China, Russia, close to the Philippines, right in New Guinea, or close to Borneo, and into um, some panic connected with China, I think. So there may be some overreaching, or there may be a conflict averted between China and Indonesia, or out there. Um, there's a Saturn line running through Japan, so Saturn's economy is a little bit compressed right now. It's not a bad economy by any means, but again, it's a little bit of a panic connected with it. That's also affecting the Philippines, Borneo, and Indonesia, and Western Australia. The last line we're looking at, the last set of lines we're looking at is that Saturn line, going right through Guyana and going and actually hurting industry significantly. So again, let's go over to this cluster of lines hitting off Australia. So we have that cluster of planets all hitting Australia's economic center. This can be boom or it can be bust for Australia. So you may see, if you see the Australian stock market take a little bit of a, so I think that may be about it for this week. Um, those lines, let me just recap because I'm not sure I covered those lines over here. But these lines indicate disruption to local government, additional court cases, some financial um, constraints, and also over here, some desire to change the government over in Eastern Australia. Nothing's hitting New Zealand right now, so New Zealand deserves a bit of a break. And that's all I have for you this week. I hope I didn't fade too much for you. Um, if you'd like to contact me for reading or for lessons, please call or text me at 508-525-0001. Also check out our store, Crystal Expectations. It's at 854 Brock Avenue, New Bedford, Massachusetts, 02744. And you can reach me at the number for the store, or if you want to, or if you're old fashioned and you want the store number, the store phone number is 508-990-7898. But I encourage you to contact me if you have any questions about what we have in terms of readings or lessons or what we have at the store. Please, I'm very easy to talk with, and I'd be happy to hear from you. Again, I'm a little bit tired this afternoon, but I love you all, and thank you very much for watching. I literally couldn't do this without you, but I want to bring more people on board. So maybe I'll be doing some serious work on how the algorithm works and seeing if I can boost this up a little bit on my end. Any suggestions you have on your end would be more than welcome. And that's it for me for this week. Again, I love you all. Thank you so much for watching and have a great week. Okay? And may all your positive dreams come true. Namaste. Again, thank you so much.